record on.
Yeah, that would be great.
So good morning, Connie.
Which
Kiki, I mean, sorry, I
Good
should
morning.
again.
Yeah.
uh, how
Should
nice
I
to
repeat
see you.
myself? Would that be easier?
Yeah, you were just saying what you're doing here, and that's great.
Yeah, yeah. So, let me just briefly introduce myself. I'm a PhD student from Hong Kong, and I'm here attaching at UW for 3 months for a research exchange. And my research topic is mostly about envisioning low carbon communities. So that's why I host workshop for adults and youths. And I've been working closely with Bagator Nixis in Barton Hill and Easton. And yeah, like they are working on like a heat project. So it's heavily related to energy use as well. So that's why like we have the collaboration. And I know Bristol Energy Network and Bristol Energy Cooperatives work really closely on solar development and renewables. So, like me and also my team back in Hong Kong, we are trying to see if there's any collaboration or future opportunities or research opportunities available because we are planning to extend the research to Bristol, which is like replicate a project from Hong Kong to Bristol. So yeah, like
Great. So, what are you doing in Hong Kong that you think could work well in Bristol?
yeah, so we were working on like a electricity consumption project, which is about smart electricity data and like putting in sensors at people's homes' electricity boxes and combined with community engagement workshops and to see if there's like a combined effect on smart data and community engagement partnerships and all sorts. So we are planning or we are exploring possibilities of replicating the project to Bristol and also to South Korea in Seoul.
Oh.
So yeah,
There's if you're working with Bagator, you must know Stuart Phelps.
yeah, really close. I've seen him like all the time.
There you go. So yeah, I'm very fond of Stuart and the things he's done with as an activist, preventing a diesel generator top-up station in Lockleys and getting batteries in there. So he's
Yeah.
very good getting the community involved. And over at Eastern Community Centre, well, you'll know about the whole heat system there, which was
Hmm.
developed by CPRO, who were doing they were monitoring, they had a system for monitoring consumption in a house before you would put in any measures. So they were able to build a kind of carbon twin of a place. And I worked with them in a project putting solar on domestic roofs in Lockleys in 2012-13. So that's the sort of, so I'm aware of some of the personalities that you're working with and have been involved in one co-op already. So, what would you like to talk about today?
Yeah, I'm actually really curious about your background. Like, are you a solar installer or like do you work closely with a lot of organizations to do renewable or what kind
Yeah,
of
um, yeah, I trained as a chemist, and
mm,
that turns out to be quite useful for understanding energy equations and things like that. But I
mm,
jumped straight into computing after university, and even when I lived in Silicon Valley for 6 years or so. And I sort of didn't come back to Europe till I got a Macintosh. So this was quite some time ago, but I came back to Europe in time for the fall of the Berlin Wall with an early Macintosh.
oh,
And I've done a bunch of corporate consulting and project management. And round about the turn of the century, the millennium, I decided I wanted to get involved in the environment and sustainability. And I thought that ought to be pretty easy, and it turned out to be quite a long learning curve.
oh.
And
I mean, things are changing year by year so quick.
yes, indeed. Um, and one of the first things that I got, I got involved with a community building called Hamilton House when I moved to Bristol, which was owned by a social entrepreneur, Martin Conley. Unfortunately, he's passed on, but it was for a while this really pioneering community hub that was responsible. It's a lot of community engagement happened in that building, and a lot of community projects grew out of it. And we put Bristol's first community-owned solar roof on Hamilton House. And it was actually shared between two community co-ops that were founded at the same time, Bristol Energy Co-op and Bristol Power Co-op. And I sort of project man, it took a year just to get everybody to understand what feed-in tariffs were going to be and that we could fund it and find some finance. It's getting into renewable energy was quite a challenge. But just before that, there had been an attempt from an outside company from outside Bristol to build a sustainable biofuel diesel power plant. And they wanted to put in 30 or was it 60 megawatts of diesel generators powered by palm oil, right? And it was, startlingly unsustainable. And it was presumably sustainable because it's biomass, but it had to be sustainable biomass, which meant it would have to run on palm oil from new palm oil plantations. So they would have to deforest an area the size of Bristol to power this power plant. It was it did my brain in just thinking about it. But the city said no, and the local Green Capital Momentum Group built up a case with another group called Biofuel Watch against this awful thing. And we were beaten at a planning inquiry, but fortunately it's never been built. But that was I thought after that, wow, we have got to do, if we're going to do anything, it's got to be truly sustainable. And by that time, the government was just about to introduce these feed-in tariffs. And so that was the easy way for communities to start to get some experience with renewable energy. So as you found, these several co-ops started in the area. The one with the most money and most success was Bath and West Community Energy, because they started off with a £2 million grant from Scottish and Southern Energy. So, but so communities started to get involved in figuring this all out, and I jumped in, and right at the start, it seemed people were, we've got to get solar on schools, and we've got to get it on community centers, and everybody's agreeing. I was saying, hang on a tick, we need to get it on people's roofs, people's homes. There's since then, the council did a survey for its One City climate strategy, which shows there's room for 500 megawatts of solar on just half the roofs in Bristol. And that survey is wrong now, because it's based on solar panels from a few years ago, which means that the estimate was done when solar panels were 250 watts. Well, they're 400 or 407.
Now it's way more efficient. Yeah.
And in the Chinese, Yingli are building solar panels with perovskite layers. So we can expect solar panels will be 600 watts. So 500 megawatts on Bristol's roofs, which would be enough to supply most of our electricity, turns into 1.2 gigawatts, which would be enough to supply our transport energy as well. Okay.
Oh, really?
Right. So there's issues about storage and winter and all of that. But right now, just over the last few days, I saw an article in The Guardian. I'll stop after this. An article in The Guardian saying, guess what? There's more capacity to build solar panels than there is places to put it. because it takes time to get connections to the grid.
Mm.
And I'm going, yeah, but if you put the solar panels on people's roofs, you don't need a grid connection, right? So
Yeah.
it's like
Mm.
you're looking in the wrong place. You're looking at treating it as power stations when a big, huge chunk of energy can be on people's roofs, supplying their houses directly. And so um, there's not much talk of this. There's a lovely little project called Power in Walthamstow in London, and there's a project called Solar Streets in Sheffield, which are both little community projects trying to organize solar on streets with subscriptions from people. But one of the problems with those are typically they only get solar for people who own their own home. So what about people in council flats or in rental housing? So there are some issues, and the government are right now doing a consultation. At the end of this month is the deadline for a consultation on the barriers to community power. And it's pretty easy at the moment. You can put 4 kilowatts of solar on a roof without 3.84 kilowatts without asking for permission. But because the panels are more and more powerful, there's room for far more solar. And we don't want to put, oh, we'll put 10 panels on a roof. It's like, how many panels can we get on this roof? Let's max out the roofs of Bristol and have as much cheap energy from our roofs as possible. That's my concept. So this new project that I'm working on called Resilience Network is about building capacity in the community to tackle mitigation of climate change. What are we going to do when there are big shocks? But part of that is having our communities being strong and generative. And if we're making, so a gigawatt of solar on Bristol's roofs would generate a terawatt hour of electricity a year, which at the prices we were paying
Mm.
before Putin invaded Ukraine is about 160 million pounds a year worth of electricity. Now it's twice that, but we could be selling it for half price to people.
Mm.
We could be giving people cheap electricity, not seeing their bills double, but seeing their bills start to halve. So that's the potential for community power. And at the moment, I think if you look around, you'll find that the community projects at the moment are really, by comparison with the potential, really small-minded. And communities need to look at what's really possible and then think, my goodness, if we're going to be carbon neutral by 2030. So, and this is an interesting point. Bristol is just, it now has a majority green council and slightly more Greens than there are socialists, but it's a red-green council, which is almost ideal. You couldn't hope for a better environment to do things, and we're likely, it's quite possible that we'll have a Green MP soon, and certainly a change of government to a government that is going to put 600 million pounds a year into community energy. We don't know how to spend that much in Bristol at the moment. So we've got to really wake up and shift gear.
I think that's a really interesting point, like how you covered multiple issues. So it's like how community developments are currently at in Bristol and and how it tries to address like giving more renewable into the community and residents. But at the same time with the like efficiencies of solar panels being like so advanced, like the community or no, like even residents itself as individuals could be able to install more solar panels on the rooftop and supply like more electricity for themselves. I think that's a really good, very interesting issue. But at the same time, like from my perspective, I see a gap between like community development for renewable energy and like renewable energy households themselves. It's
Yeah.
like, what's the purpose of community, and what's the purpose of community energy? It's as as a whole for Bristol. Is it like a project to support like poor people who can't afford to do renewables, or is it just a project to connect like people who could afford renewable energy? So I'm just wondering like what's the mean for it, and like if there is anything that we could improve in the mindsets when we build community energy, because in Hong Kong it's so fresh and it's so new that like a community is not a thing for when we think about solar energy or renewables, because people are just installing solar panels as an individual, and we just don't think about connecting, sharing, or connecting people in the community, in the residential area. So I don't know, what's your thought? It might be a big question. So
Well, you've got a lot of big apartment housing in Hong Kong, and it's not so easy to put solar on. You have a tiny little roof and hundreds of people living in the building. It's not so
yeah.
easy to put a solar roof, but there must be other places. And
Yeah, yeah.
to be fair, at the moment we have an initiative. Um, Octopus, one of our power companies, is in the process of planning how to build massive solar farms in Morocco, in the north of Africa, in the desert, and to run huge high voltage cables to the UK to ship solar energy from there to here. Because a solar panel in the Sahara generates twice as much energy as a solar panel in Bristol, and and does it right through the year. It doesn't have the same problem we have of winter. So there are obviously big scale things that we can do, and you have mainland China just across the bay from you in Hong Kong, and China itself is wow. It's the biggest. It's installing more solar than the rest of the world put together. Last year, half the cars sold, were electric, and solar went up worldwide by 50%, most of that in China, of course. But putting those two together, something happened last year. The amount of petrol and diesel in the world consumed went down 1%. So that's a tipping point. And given that solar energy it's going to be more than whatever it grew by last year, it will grow by another 20, 30, 40% on top of that this year. And the 50% of electric car sales will become 60 or 70% of electric car sales. And the 1% decrease will be 3 or 4 or 5% decrease. So we're at the start of this run to massive amounts of solar energy. And the only people who have forecast this correctly are a group called Rethink X, who have a book called Rethinking Humanity. And they are saying that we are moving towards a world in which we will have an excess of solar energy and an excess of storage capacity in our battery electric vehicles. So what we are planning with Resilience Network, we've got two kinds of retrofit that we're planning. One is simply to put as much solar on a roof as possible, and then put a community carpool in the street. And so we don't want to put, we don't want people who can afford to pay to put solar on their roof and a little battery, and I've got my electricity and I'm all right, thank you very much, and I can afford to pay and I'm saving money. Isn't that wonderful? We want everybody to say, look, we've got solar's right down the street, right? And we've got a car club with, enough battery storage, because we're just now already getting electric vehicles. At the beginning of this year, 3 different manufacturers announced 1,000-mile electric vehicle batteries, right? And then they're saying, well, of course, you're not going to drive 1,000 miles. So I tell you what, we'll give you a 500-mile electric battery and a lighter car, right? So, but the point is, this technology is just landing right at the time that we need it. And it's in the gift. We should be sitting as a community together and saying, what's possible with this technology? And the answer is, well, we could power our streets and our transport, and we could cover our streets with high quality, high power solar. And the economics are such that you could pay off the cost of the solar in 10 years or less while charging people half price for the electricity. And so my question is, who's planning that? Where's the meeting that I go to make this happen? Where do we get the money? And I did a couple of at the beginning of last year, I did a talk to a Quaker group called "The Age of Energy Abundance: Is It Closer Than We Think?" Right? And the same week, the Financial Times published an article, and all they did was rearrange the words and take out the question mark. It said, "The age of abundant energy is closer than we think," right? But it was making all these points. And at the beginning of this year, I did a talk which was called Energy Snakes and Ladders, right? And you know the game Snakes and Ladders. You have that? Yeah. So it's obvious what the ladders are. The ladders are 600-watt solar panels, 1,000-mile electric batteries, solar cheaper than you can imagine. And here's the point. The solar energy might get quite cheap while you're paying off the cost of the panels. When you've paid off the cost of the panels, the cost of the energy gets cheaper still, right? And there's an economist called Jeremy Rifkin who's written a book called The Zero Marginal Cost Society. And the subtitle is a long one. It's the Internet of Things, the Community Commons, and the Eclipse of Capitalism. And there's a euphemism in there because he doesn't mean eclipse. He means sort of fading away, doesn't come back, doesn't need to come back, because he's explaining communities can do everything they want with cheap energy, cheap communication, and cheap transport, and they can own it all. You don't have to say, oh, well, but Uber will make a fortune out of us, or, Facebook only love us because they make billions on advertising. It's like, we can do all this ourselves. You're going to have phones with access to all the world's knowledge and with an intelligent interface. So we could have been recording this on ChatGPT, right? And it would have a perfect transcript. And you could say, well, I am recording this with an AI anyway. So we could have a perfect transcript and say, okay, so can you set that out as a strategy for community energy, right? And then you have a few more conversations and workshops like this, and you work up what's your best choice. And so when we started the Resilience Network, this was Iris Partridge last year, we held a little meeting with a few community centers, and I showed a few slides. Let's see if I can screen share. Oh, I know why it's not going to work. It's not going to work because...
Are these like communities, like organizations locally, or are they like residential, like networks
Okay,
that you talk to?
so you have, okay, I'll maybe get that slide later. I won't do it now.
Yeah, no worries.
Now I'm just
Or
trying to...
maybe you can just send me when
I
like
will.
when we
I'm just
finish
trying to
the
think of this
meeting.
thing.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah, it's just showing the rate at which solar is increasing exponentially, and how on the curve that it is now, the world will have an excess of solar energy by 2032-ish, not 2050. Our government says, oh, we've got to decarbonize by 2050. And I'm saying, you're kidding. If I'm still alive, I'm going to be partying because we'll have finished decarbonizing 20 years before. Whatever you're doing, right?
I always thought, I don't know, like if how could we like achieve abundant solar energy? I mean, like,
Well, the point is, I was thinking a few years ago, how can we get, you know, enough solar
mm,
energy on our city? But because of this advance with perovskite crystals and the power of solar panels and the efficiency of solar panels, you can have more solar energy than you need. But just, as of course, with solar, it's at the wrong time. Most people aren't in their houses during the day, so you're churning out solar. But
true.
some people won't be using their cars during the day, so you can be charging electric batteries and using, a street full of electric cars to run your street at night. And if in the summer you've got too much energy, then you do what they're starting to do with North Sea wind farms, which is, oh, we've got nearly 40 gigawatts uh, of wind farm in the North Sea. Uh, how much electricity do we use in the UK? Hang on, we only use 40 gigawatts of electricity. Don't generate any more. Oh, but you need it for when the days aren't windy. Oh, okay. So they're starting to electrolyze water and ship the electricity as hydrogen, and you can store it. Where can you store it? You can store it under the North Sea. That's where all the methane was. So you can put it back under the North Sea, and you can generate all the wind energy that the country needs. There's enough potential in the North Sea for wind energy to power the United Kingdom and all its transport and export billions of pounds worth of wind to Europe as well. So that's great. But if that was done for us by energy companies and they'd say, oh, how much can we charge you for the electricity? And we can put a cap on it by putting solar on our roofs and saying, if you want to charge us too much, we won't buy it from you. We'll just have our own renewable energy. Thank you very much. It's wonderful what you've done. You're very clever. You're making windfall profits. But let's have a proper economy where the economy is aimed at supporting our communities and our people and our young people and our health service, and not just making insane, insane profits for kleptomaniacs and psychopaths who are running our governments and corporations. Right? Let's have the conversation about being real and treating each other as human beings. And in this age of energy abundance, we can have abundant energy and we can have the conversation. Communities can say, if the worst comes to the worst, we'll make it ourselves. But if you want to come and sit at the table and talk with us about what would make a fairer world and a clean world, then we could do it even faster. So I think, but at the moment, I think that communities are just dithering. We're not aware of what the potential is. We're certainly not having these conversations yet in Bristol about, and the a week after we did our first presentation on the resilience network, I showed the slides to a director of a solar company, and he brought in his managing director and said, is this guy right that communities could be a route to get solar on the roofs of houses? And the guy said, well, of course. It's quite hard for a solar installer because people are being assaulted at the moment by solar installers. Well, we can put solar on your roof. The government's got grants. It'll be cheap. But it's only for owner occupiers. And we want to, why should people have to organize it? Let the community organize it for people. Some poor person saying, it was cold in the winter and my energy bill was too big. And you say, well, why didn't you have solar on your roof? And the answer is, well, I don't own the house, haven't got the money for it, and it would be generating energy at the wrong time of year. So community centers should be saying, okay, we understand. We, when we had a cold snap 2 winters ago, we opened our community center so you could come here and be warm. Now we're going to open our community center so we can plan renewable energy for the whole community. It's going to cut everybody's bills. We'll figure out how to store it for the winter as well. All of that. We've got all the power to do it, all the intelligence, and we should be organizing it right now. Right now, not, and just at the point, and we're just at this wonderful point where we've got a super green council, which is
And
super.
it's a transition period as well. Everyone's seeking new solutions.
Yeah, and
right?
we're going to have a new government, and it's not
Yeah.
conservative government. It's going to be
Mm,
it's going to be a socialist government, or at least it's going to be a
mm,
conservative Labour government, or yeah, people know what I mean.
yeah.
It's going to be a middle of the road Labour government, but it's committed to getting to carbon neutral by 2030 and having
Yeah.
a government-owned power supply. So we're starting to get things in the right direction. And communities should be saying, oh, great, 600 million a year. That's great. We've got room for, we've got room for £1 billion worth of solar just on Bristol. So let's spread
Mm,
this 600 million across our core cities and our regional towns and put in pilots showing what's possible, streets of solar, and then build
mm.
up from that. Sorry, that you've just experienced my sort of whole rant in half an hour. But the
No
point is,
worries.
it's possible to present a clean energy future in half an hour. Oh, right. And at the end of the conversation with this managing director of the solar company, my buddy said, "All right, thanks, Julian." Put the phone down, and he said, "Could you put 100 million in solar on roofs in Bristol for me?"
What? Cool.
Right? Could you put and as you can imagine, 5 seconds later, all the fuses in my brain blew because that was such a big number, right? But during
Yeah.
those 5 seconds, I managed to say yes because I knew there's room for it, right? And then there's lots of questions like, where would you get that money? But we had a chairman of the Bank of England called Mark Carney, who's a Canadian. And he was saying, you know what? All this fossil energy, fossil wealth that we've got in the stock exchange, the assets of our oil companies, all of that, most of it, has not got to come out of the ground because there's enough
Mm.
just in the London Stock Exchange. The London Stock Exchange has got enough fossil energy just in the London Stock Exchange to guarantee 5 degrees of global warming. Well, with one and a
Oh, so it's like allocated amount already.
right, so
Is that
1.5 degrees of global warming is enough to kill our favorite television presenters when they go on holiday to Greece already, right? We don't
mm.
want 5 degrees of global warming. So he's saying these assets must remain in the ground. Now that may cause a financial crash, but and so all the energy companies are saying, well, I want to get mine out of the ground as quick as possible and make us. And Rishi, I want a concession in the North Sea, open up the North Sea for all of us. We want to get all the oil out as quickly as possible and make as much money as possible. And the only way to stop them is not by screaming at them and saying you've got to not do this. It's by not buying petrol. Right? And if you've got renewable energy that's cheap that you own in your community, and you've got an electric car outside your house that charged yesterday for free, that's good enough to get you from Bristol to Edinburgh and back, then we don't need oil coming out of the North Sea. And so the oil companies the same thing will happen to them as happened to mainframe computer makers when personal computers came along. People just bought their own computer. Thank you very much. Don't need that. So thank you very much. Bristol is an energy island. We make enough energy just in Bristol for the whole city. Don't need anything from the North Sea. You can stop drilling. put wind turbines there if you like, right? So that's the story. And we just need to get that story out there against the noise coming from the fossil energy, but it's empty noise coming from the fossil energy industry. The amount of petrol and diesel went down. They don't want you to know that it went down 1% last year. But if you know that, that's still that much going into the atmosphere every year. It's got to be less and less and less and less. And then the planet will figure out how to recover.
I think that's very interesting in terms of like how solar energy and also renewables are replacing traditional fossil fuels. But then at the same time, I think to roll out such a community-based renewable plan requires not only like in private companies or even the council's work, it's like persuading residents itself. It's a challenge. And it's like how do you see it? It's like the knowledge within the individuals, is it sufficient
Oh,
or
but lovely.
do people still need more education on it?
This is the point. When the feed-in tariff came out, I knew that this was a government subsidy and it wouldn't last forever, but it was an opportunity to
Mm,
experiment. So we held some
mm,
workshops, we held some events in Lockleys, which is a former council estate, lovely estate, lots of green open land in Lockleys, a little bit disadvantaged. And we said, who would like to have free solar on their roofs? And they sort of said, what are you doing here? Nobody ever does anything for us, right? And perfectly understandable. But,
It's like they are so suspicious with like for all the acts that the council do. Like
yeah,
they're against on everything. I don't know. It's just from my 3 months experience, but it's like
but so we stood our ground, right? And they said, "What's in it for you?" And I said, "Well, I'm kind of an energy nerd. I I I I I just want your roof. I want to put solar on your roof. You can, I want to watch what happens to it. You can have the electricity for free. I really don't mind." Oh, okay. And so in the group, you would have people who are aggressive and upset, and then you would have people say, "Well, okay, so suppose you're going to do this. What blah 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 blah," and you say blah blah blah, and the people don't necessarily understand the answers, but they're looking to see who's asking the questions, and whether that question is getting by. And by the time we had 3 meetings, people were signing up. We only had the money to do 27 roofs, and 100 people wanted to have solar, and they didn't. It had to be on people's. The council wouldn't let us put it on council house roofs, so we had to put it on the roofs of private owners at the time. But it was enough for us to do an experiment and get the results, because we were monitoring the energy use. We've got smart meters in the houses, and we've been able to see the energy use since. And, okay, people are getting some free energy. The people who stay at home during the day get more free energy. It's great. And as soon as we'd done it, we had people coming along saying, well, when you said, when Damon said you were going to put solar on our roof, I thought, like next year, but it's already on my roof. And another man was saying, oh, there's a little light on the meter that shows when I'm not buying electricity from the grid, when I'm making it from my solar roof. Sometimes I just sit and look at that light. Right? Lovely. So once people get the experience then the trust returns. If you come in and you make a sensible offer and you follow through on it, you show that you're trustworthy, then trust starts to be restored in our neighborhoods. And yes, our neighborhoods have been crippled, and the council, its budget was cut by central government, and the council withdrew support for a lot of community centres. So this has been really bad. But we're saying, look, we'll put solar on people's roofs. You will get electricity at a discount. We'll work with your energy company. It isn't that you'll be paying us for it. That your energy bill will show the effect of the solar, it will show some of your electricity is at a discount. And they'll be buying that electricity from the community co-op that paid for the solar panels. And some of that income will go towards supporting your community center. So communities will be getting cheaper electricity and subsidizing their community centers so they can offer better services. And, once, it's perfectly reasonable to say, yeah, that's just, you'll never pull that off. And I say, watch this space. We've already got funding for a feasibility study. We're already, and there are barriers. We've got to get an energy company on board. We did have an energy company who would work with us called Bristol Energy Company that was founded by the council, and then they sold it off because at one point they felt they were spending too much money on it. So the council already had an energy company, which they could have used to do exactly what I'm describing, put £1 billion worth of solar on the roofs of Bristol, a gigawatt of solar. Probably cost less than $1 billion. So the council could be doing this. It hasn't had the imagination to do it. The community has got the intelligence. We're being augmented by artificial intelligence. For heaven's sake, we ought to be able to figure this out. And now we should be able to figure it out quite quickly and do this at a brisk pace.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's in a way, it's about not just about the technology, but it's about persuading and educating the community, the residents, that this would work and it's trustworthy. And I think I wanted to say something. Yeah, it's from what I see currently, I see that there's a misalignment between deploying solar energy as a resident and also connecting all these community projects as a whole, because it's very feasible, as you mentioned. It's like the community could actually benefit from all these shared solar, but at the same time, no one's introducing all these plans to people, and people would just think that, oh, it's like a dream plan. Of course, it would work. You don't have to pay anything, but then people would think, oh, it might not work in my community. And I'm just wondering, who would be the best people, or who would be the best organization to introduce all this to the local residents? Would it be community groups, or would it be the residential groups themselves, or would it be the council? Who do you think is the best one?
Well, so the person who's done the best map of this, of the community groups, is Rosanna Chichun at Bristol Energy Network. She's a researcher at the university, and when we had some meeting where some VIP came along, and she showed them her map of the sort of Bristol Energy setup. And in conversation with her at one point, she was saying, well, if this is going to be done, it needs to be a new organization to do this. And I think it's because there's so many community organizations, Bristol Energy Network, there's a co-op, but the energy co-op at the moment, its motivation is to get renewable energy everywhere, but it's also an investment club. So it's not about getting energy as cheap as possible for people. It's about getting a decent return for the members of the co-op who are investors. So we need to bring all the good people, and they're great people. They acknowledge they want renewable energy across the whole city. So we just need to bring people together and say, how are we going to do this? And we're suggesting a cooperative made up from all the physical community centers and some virtual ones. Because, how did Apple get iPhones everywhere? And the answer was Apple stores, right? There had to be a place that you could come to where you could try it, felt good, and see other people buying stuff. So we find that, when you have a workshop at a community center, all the questions, it's a banging on people's doors. They're, what do my neighbors think? We say, well, come and have tea and cakes, and we'll see what your neighbors think. We'll talk to you all together at the same time. So I think it can be done through community, and it won't take forever to build trust. We're aiming for this project at the moment just to do 100 home pilot, and to do that in 10 blocks of 10, right? So that in every constituency in Bristol, there's a little demonstration project connected with a local community center. And then you can come along and say, well, what's all this about? Well, that thing, what we just did in the other street, you can go and look at it if you like. See, there's 10 houses quite close to each other, all got solar panels on. They're part of a co-op. They're all getting cheaper energy. Anybody here from one of those houses? What's it like? Right. And
yeah.
you build up. It's not rocket science.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. It's like community centers already have like their existing networks with the locals and
Yeah.
certain amount of trust, I bet. So
Yeah.
like
And they know where the houses are,
building,
and maybe even have a newsletter. When we did this in Lockley,
yeah.
they had a newsletter called Unlocked, and it was like, oh, we've got an issue that's going out like on Thursday or something. If you could give us a pamphlet, we could deliver that. So we were able to have a meeting really quickly, and 50, 60 people came along, and at one point, so I was talking at one point, and we had a wonderful guy coming in as a master of ceremonies to control the meeting. And we had a German energy engineer and me talking. And eventually this guy who was running the meeting, he said, David, Mike, shut up. And he said, just give these people 3 reasons why they should put solar on their roofs. And I said, well, cheaper energy bills, right? And it'll create jobs in the community. And then I said, I'm blanking. And somebody shouted, good for the environment. And I went, oh yeah, I forgot.
Lost the main point.
Right. So that was just classic, right? But I mean, we did get the third point out, and it was good for the environment.
Yeah.
But and the point was that point was made after saying it'll cut your energy bill and it will create local jobs, right? So that's the point.
Yeah.
We're looking after the planet, but it will be good for us.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting and very advanced move that you guys are taking. I think it's very beneficial to the community, and I really hope it would roll out to Greater Bristol very soon.
Right. Well, and I would love it if we can, work with you around some of these community engagements, because if you can, if we can be doing this here, and it can be going up in Hong Kong, and where else did you say?
South Korea in
South
Seoul.
Korea, Seoul. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah. We should have a K-pop tour from Bristol.
I mean, in Seoul,
K-pop
it's very
solar.
like renewable energy is very advanced. It's one of the cases where they, the tower blocks things, apartment buildings, they would put solar panels in the balcony on each of the floors.
Yeah.
So everyone owns like a solar panel and they could have their own electricity generated and they could just use it,
Right.
which of course, like efficiency wise, is not as good. But then it's about like educating the residents and also
And
sharing the benefits.
you mentioned SoulShare, and yeah, so funnily enough, there's a company called SoulShare in Bangladesh, and
Really?
they have a similar but different idea. They sell a box, and the box has got a meter in it and a coin box and a few plugs and sockets. And you can connect it to your roof, and you put solar on it. You can connect it to a battery. You can connect it to a power strip so that you can be taking power off for the house. And you can connect it to your neighbor's house, your neighbor's box. So you've just got a local area energy network. And, if you've got enough money to pay for a bunch of panels, then you could be making more energy than you need, and people could be putting coins in their box. You could be earning money from other people using your spare electric, and so on. So, but
Yeah.
fault sharing, I only just heard about this one. It's almost the standard problem for tower blocks and
Mm,
for mixed housing. So Bristol's got quite a lot of old people housing in sort of
mm,
low-level flats
yes.
with big roofs. And the question is, well, how would you put solar on there? Could each house have, 2 or 3 panels? And it's, well, you'd be really
Mm,
easy to do that. And there's 2 ways to do it. The obvious way to do it is with a virtual network run with the energy company, right? So
yeah.
each house has a meter, and there's a meter at the entrance to the houses, right, where the energy
Mm,
comes in. And you measure total energy import and export, but you
mm,
also measure all the electricity that's being made from the solar panels, and you
mm,
share that fairly using, whatever algorithm you like between the people and their individual energy bills. And
mm,
SoulShare are basically saying, well, we can make a box that will do that. And we'll do it we'll put a big set of solar panels on the roof, and then we'll have a box and we'll have a splitter, and we'll feed a
mm,
wire to each house. And that's okay. You don't need it because it could all be done in software. It would be done with
yeah.
one more
It's
meter.
just balancing the demand and
Yeah, yeah,
supply.
yeah. So, let's let's use our intelligence. Computing power is virtually free, and it's getting more and more
Mm,
intelligent. So let's just design. It's easy to see that. So you can imagine a desktop. You draw a model of the streets, and you put solar on your models, and you put electric cars in there, and you draw some wires, and you say job done, right? And oh well, um, and that would work in Legoland. That would be easy. So what we need to do is figure it out with the energy companies, so that they're just tracking everything and balancing it all fairly. It's not, and your offer is, look, we want to put solar on 90,000 roofs. Is there an energy company anywhere that would like 90,000 new customers? Because none of the
mm,
energy companies at the moment is providing the software we need.
mm,
As soon as we get one that will do it, well, 2, because we don't want just to be tied to one company and then have it be sold off by the council. But if you've got 2 or 3 energy companies who have the software, then we would
mm.
love to work with them and create new customers for them who are automatically already happy because their energy bill is going to be going down.
Mm. I think it's like creating new intermediaries
Yeah.
between residents and also electricity companies. And what I saw is like Octopus now has like the agile pricing for solar
Yep.
owners, and they like who owns batteries as well. So it's like they could buy electricity at wholesale prices while like balancing between their battery electricity. But then it's about like how do we connect all these households together and
And
like
and without knowing it, you're mentioning a problem that wasn't solved in our between our earliest project and this one. And that was
mm,
when we had a feed-in tariff, you were paid for every kilowatt you generated. When we started
yeah.
to try and devise a system that would work without a feed-in tariff, it was
Mm,
like, well, yeah, but what about how much would we earn for the electricity that people don't use that's exported? And
yeah.
for a while, the export prices were very low. But now, companies like Octopus are offering quite good tariffs for the electricity you don't use. So the
Mm,
income from the project, whether you're buying the electricity directly or Octopus are buying an excess from you, is enough to pay off the cost of the solar. So, the numbers stack up
mm,
once you've got
yeah.
a minimum viable product, a business case that stacks up, then
True.
it's a matter of being a good enough organizer to make it happen.
Yeah.
And communities, on a good day, we're great organizers. We know how to organize street parties and so on.
Yeah. I mean, I really appreciate how forward thinking you guys are. It's like how people used to think that solar energy and solar communities are not a profitable like thing, but then it's actually like a business, like viable business plan for, I mean, electricity company or even like for residents themselves. But I do have one question regarding like the practical solar thing in Bristol because Bristol rains so much. And then from a friend, like their family just installed solar panels on their rooftops. And what they told me was like the payback period is around like 20 years because of the weather. Like,
No, the payback period is around 20 years because of the solar installers. Um, the solar
mm,
installers have figured out so Bristol has got a so yeah has got a scheme called Solar Together, which
mm,
the council and the local area council say, oh, we got this great scheme, join it. It's not their great scheme. They were sold it by a couple of European entrepreneurs who are saying,
oh,
oh, we could organize solar installers and a marketing scheme to sell solar because it's got the endorsement of the council, and we'll recruit councils for it and say we're going to give you best price and everything. And then you go and get a quote from them, and it's like, you want £6,000 for 4 kilowatts and another £4,000 for a couple of kilowatt hours of battery. So like, that's not even cheap. It's okay. It's what other solar installers would charge. But the scheme is designed as much as anything for the solar installers. The people who designed the scheme are saying, we'll do marketing for you in exchange for you giving us a commission every time we give you a sale. And we're going to get the sales because we're doing it through our council. And the council is saying, oh, we've got this scheme. It's so good for our people. And as you're saying, the scheme pays for itself in exactly 20 years because they've priced it as high as they can get away with without actually saying we're ripping you off. Um,
it's
and
still on the project, like the
so,
solar together.
so here's what you do. You go to a solar company and you say, what's your best price for a megawatt of solar? Right. And then you go to well, the companies do the whole thing. You say, yeah, okay, now we want inverters and wiring and stuff like that. And then you build a company within your community. Our local community colleges are training solar installers and electricians, right? So you go straight to them and say, we're going to set up a community co-op to do these installs. It doesn't have to make, £2,000 profit every time it sells one, because we're going to organize it streets at a time. And guess what? If you organize students around this, they'll be on an apprenticeship, and so they'll be earning money while they're getting a degree level training and installing solar on people. So, win-win-win. So yes, absolutely right. People, oh, well, my solar's not paying for itself. And it turns out, yes, we have rain here. It, on average, if you put a 1 kilowatt solar panel, 1 kilowatt of solar panels on a roof in Bristol, you will get on average 1,000 kilowatt hours in a year off those solar panels. If you did it in Morocco, you'd get 2,000 hours. So obviously it makes complete sense to put the panels in Morocco and not Bristol, unless you live in Bristol, because, it's a long way to Morocco, and, nobody's going to let you put a wire all the way along. Octopus might figure out how to do it, but they might also be thinking, how much can I sell this electricity for? And we want to be saying, let's put it on our own roofs and figure out how little we can sell it for. And then you have a fair and just community.
True, true. I mean, even if it generates less than some other European countries, doesn't mean it's not worth doing, right? Like,
Yeah, that's the point. It's like we can do it cheaper than you can. And you say,
mm,
and will you sell it to us cheaper than we could
mm,
sell it to ourselves if we do it ourselves? And oh no, you know, we have shareholders. We have foreign bank accounts. We have offshore
mm.
funds. You know, I mean, we got to sell it to you for as much as we can make. Thank you very much. Next. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
we're running. You know, we're a local
Oh
company.
yeah.
We'd love to be
Yeah,
part of
yeah.
it. Would you give us a fair price? Yeah, yeah, you can do some
Mm.
of the installs. That'd be great.
That's great. Yeah, I think it's such a nice like initiative, like a very viable project from my point of view. So I really hope it will roll out soon.
Cool. Yeah, so do we. You know, there's obviously some work to it. You know, as we're talking, this is just ideas. Although, you know, we spent a year talking, and we have some money from a community energy fund, who
Mm,
basically they said, we like the idea. We think it's quite risky. It's not as simple as just saying, you know, we've got a community center, we want a solar roof, will you give us some money to figure it out? You know,
mm.
most of these feasibility study monies are in things that are already, you know, you don't need to do a study, you know it. You can go to a solar installer and say, you know, please survey the roof and tell me how much it will cost. And and
Yeah.
and let's have a crowdfunder. So they're saying, you know, we're not sure that it is risky, but if any team could deliver it, we think it's, you know, you and the people of Bristol. So the job now is to bring people together in
Yeah.
workshops that you're already doing, yeah,
Mm.
and,
Yeah.
spread the word and get people and then you know, one day, like after our first event, I'm talking to an old
Mm.
friend who said, "Well, what are you doing with solar?" He said, I'm director of solar company now. I haven't talked to
Mm.
him for 30 years." And I said, "Oh, we had this meeting. I showed some slides. Show me your slides, Julian. Come and have a
Mm.
look at this. You know, and could you use a bunch of
Yeah.
money?" And the point is, there are already funds. Mark Carney is now chairman of a fund called Brookfield in Canada, which invests in
Mm.
renewable energy. And I'm looking
Mm.
at £100 million and thinking, wow, that's more money than I can ever imagine. How much have you got in Brookfield? And they say, oh, we got 68 billion in renewables. And you go, could you do £100 million project for us? And they go, bit small. And I'm going, bit big, and they're going, bit small. So,
Oh my God.
you
Yeah.
know, could we have coffee and do something? You know, so the money's there. And
Mm.
there's a company called Bristol and Bath Regional Capital, which was set
Mm.
up by a group who wanted to fund community projects in the area. And they held a meeting a year or so back, and they had
Mm.
an impact investment manager give
Mm.
a talk. And they were saying there's 2.9 billion in
Mhm.
local assets in pension funds. So
Mm.
2.9 billion is more than we need to decarbonize the United Kingdom.
Mm.
So 2.9 trillion. Anyway, a very big,
Mm.
a lot of
Yeah.
money. There's a lot of money. Yeah. We had a chancellor of the exchequer who thought Phil, somebody or other, spreadsheet Phil, he thought it would cost about a trillion to decarbonize the UK. Or was it 100
Mm.
trillion? Whatever it was. There's more money than that in our pension funds. And the pension funds,
Mm.
that's us. That's people who the people who've done the work should
Mm.
be, we should be using their money to provide warmth and cheap electricity to their children and, you know, nice jobs as solar installers to their grandchildren and so on.
Totally. Yeah. And it's their hard work, it's their money. It's like
Yeah,
money should go back to benefiting the people and the community. And
yeah,
as you mentioned, it's like
yeah,
even the money is there, like it should be spent wisely to
yeah. we
so
don't
that it is beneficial. Yeah.
we don't want the money from oligarchs and so on who are just out to make money. We want to use our own money to
Yeah.
fund our own communities and to separate ourselves from the people who are greedy. And then
Mm,
they'll wise up a bit and say, "Oh, aren't you going to play with me?" I say, "Well, make us an offer.
mm,
Make us a
yeah.
decent offer." The last offer
Yeah.
was, "We're going to charge you as much as we can for everything," and it ended up not being any fun. We couldn't afford houses anymore. Not fair.
Oh no. Yeah.
So having energy that's affordable and food that's affordable, you know,
Mm,
healthcare that's free at the point of use. We still know that's the way things should be. And we should, as much as possible, we should. Education used to be free for the kids who are getting it because it was creating an asset for the country, and so on.
true, true, totally. And I mean, I wish I've known you earlier because like it's nearly my end of my 3 months exchange and I'm going back home. But then if I've been in Bristol, I would love to like host community workshops with you in person. But then I would be
Send
open
your
to
project.
doing like,
Don't go away. Don't go away. Stay.
oh, I wish. But I would love to do like online meetings with any of your friends in the community or people, that it's like worth connecting. But then like any opportunities, I'm happy to do so and like to collaborate. So yeah.
Great. Thank you. That's lovely. Well,
Yeah.
I'm glad the ideas make sense. I really enjoy every so often somebody comes along and says, I know somebody who's researching community energy, doing a master's or a PhD. Would you talk to them? And it's always
Hmm.
interesting because the people who are doing projects like yours, you're looking at what other researchers are doing. So you're sort of
True. Yeah.
you're connected to sort of a server full of knowledge, um,
Yeah.
and you bring that in your questions and in your experience talking to communities and so on, and it's really valuable.
Mm.
You're from my point of view, you're really welcome in our community, and I reflect it back. I would love to be doing workshops with you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, and it's so eye-opening for me as well. It's like talking to you and all different people in the community and also we're doing workshops with people. It's it's just very new experience for me. And
Yeah,
compared to my experience in Hong Kong, it's very different as well. So I'm always learning. Yeah.
yeah, and you must send me your background screen because it's really lovely, but
Oh, yeah.
it matches your skin better than it would match mine. But it's perfect. It's your colors. It's perfect.
I
Um,
will send you. Don't worry. And would you be able to send me the recording and maybe
yeah,
the
sure.
AI
Yeah. Of course,
summary as well?
of course. I
Thank
don't.
you.
I think at the moment I've only got your phone numbers, so send me your email.
Yeah. I'll drop you an email today and maybe then you can just
There you go.
forward me the
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'll put it up.
Hmm.
Great.
Yeah. Lovely meeting you.
Lovely meeting you, Kiki.
Thank
So
you so much,
have a good.
David.
I got. I
Yeah.
got a. I got a friend of mine coming to visit, who is a drummer, and he's going to see Nick Mason, who is the drummer for Pink Floyd, doing a concert this evening. So I'm meeting him.
Wow.
I'm going to meet some drummers.
Nice. Have
Enjoy,
fun. Sounds like an experience.
yeah, enjoy the rest of your day, Kiki.
Thank you. You too.
Okay,
Take care.
I'm gonna hit the button. End meeting for all.
Bye.
Bye.